What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators Online Show. Zach Albaverdi and Nick Del Toro here, and we've got a cocktail party to talk about going down on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. in Jacksonville. The Gators taking on the number one ranked Georgia Bulldogs in a rivalry renewed, Nicholas, as the divisions go to split. This will be the last time it's an East matchup, but even after the fact, I think this rivalry is going nowhere anytime soon. Maybe not even leaving Jacksonville anytime soon. But that's another topic for another day. We got a game to talk about.
Last time, probably, like, who knows who's going to start throwing money around from TV deals, but probably the last time on CBS for the very foreseeable future. This will be the 20th straight year. And we just hit with a copyright strike. This will be the 20th straight year. The last time Florida and Georgia did not play on 3:30 at CBS was 2002. That was a AP unranked Florida team playing number 5 Georgia, and Florida came out with a win there in 2002. Shout out to the Zucker.
And shout out to the HBC. Who was in town this week, and well, obviously he's always in town, but he was actually at practice and came through to give some words of wisdom to the Florida football team, as they said, Nick. So we will get into all of that. We'll obviously get into what the Gators did during their bye week. We will talk with Palmer Thombs from Dogs HQ to get some perspective on the Bulldogs and what they've got going on their side of things with no Brock Bowers this week. And obviously they had a bye week as well. So, and then we'll get into our keys to the game and what the Gators got to do to try and pull off this upset. Nick, I think if they did, it would be one of the best wins ever in this rivalry, I would think. Right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen.
I mean, regardless of the circumstances, this would be up there.
Yeah, like there crazy stuff happens in Jacksonville. This would be up there with one of the craziest. Like, listen, this isn't Georgia's team.
Like 2014 was that's the Muschamp upset, right? But Georgia wasn't the Georgia, obviously, that they are now. So but that was the game where Kelvin Taylor and Matt Jones went off, and then Will Muschamp did the monkey off.
Yeah, 38-20.
What was Georgia ranked?
Georgia was ranked 11.
Yeah, not number 1.
But that game was wild. First off, that game was wild because you had Treon Harris, who I think is 2-0 against Georgia as a starting quarterback. Completed 3 of his 6 passes, Zach. Kelvin Taylor ran the ball 25 times. Matt Jones ran the ball 25 times for 197 and 192, 4 touchdowns between them. I think Andre DeBose was in his first of his 3 senior years that year. That was a wild one. But, like, this isn't the Georgia team of 2 years ago. It's not the Georgia team of last year. Like, they're not that good. But it's still, and talking to George Foster this week and talking to Palmer this week, and hearing them kind of talk about where Georgia struggled, I'm like sitting over here, having covered Florida since 2013. And I'm like, hey, man, these problems don't seem like real problems. It seems like the problems of a team that hasn't lost in 2 years. But yeah, this would be, Zach, if Florida could beat Georgia, this would be, I don't know, you'd have to go back and find me a game that would be a bigger win for Florida in this series.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's some that are up there, but this would be improbable, and how they pull off the upset. We'll get to some of the keys. Want to start with a shout out to birddogs.com as we always do. Go to birddogs.com/Gators or use the promo code Gators to get a free Hydro Flask style water bottle with your purchase. And at birddogs.com, you can get the hat that we've seen Nick rock, the polos, the khaki shorts, and pants as well. And we are obviously big fans of the shorts. We've talked about it every week. It's become a regular part of both of our wardrobes. I was rocking the black ones this week, and they do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. So go to birddogs.com/Gators. Use that promo code to get a free Hydro Flask style water bottle with your purchase. And again, check out their hats, their polos. They got a lot of merchandise on their site that I know you guys will enjoy. And before we bring in Palmer, I do want to mention, as we did at the start of the show, a visit that the Gators got this week from the HBC. Nick, and it's not uncommon to see Spurrier around at practice. He spent time around, obviously, the coaches. They have him over at his restaurant every time they have official visitors for dinner. That's kind of part of the experience. But to have him actually address the team was a little bit new and different. And obviously, it being Florida Georgia week, everybody knows in Gator Nation that this rivalry is a little special to Spurrier. And it was interesting asking yesterday Napier and both players about it. Each of them described the wisdom. They used that word as far as what Spurrier kind of imparted on the team. But when asked what his overall message was, Nick, it was beat the dogs. And we know he cares a lot about that.
It's funny. If you ask Spurrier, when Spurrier was at Florida, freshmen couldn't play on the varsity team. So they had the baby Gators, which was just a freshman team. So if you look at Spurrier's record against Georgia, it would say 1-2 at Florida. He would tell you that he led the baby Gators against the puppies or the baby dogs, whatever they called Georgia's freshman team, with a win in his freshman year. Because Steve Spurrier never forgets a win. I'll let you know that. And you can't have enough of Steve Spurrier around the team. I think Billy said it yesterday. Spurrier does a good job of not getting in the way, but also being there, when you need to talk to him. But I would rather have Brandon Spikes talking to the team this week. That's the kind of fire I think you need talking to the team this week. And I think he would have the same message as Spurrier. He probably just has a little more energy than someone Spurrier's age to deliver that message.
Well, it was interesting too, and I asked Billy about it, and he kind of just talked specifically about Spurrier, but his opening, which is, I think it's important for fans and obviously us in the media to always pay attention to his opening, because that is something that he always prepares. He jots some notes down and some highlights that he wants to address. And I thought it was interesting that he talked about belief yesterday and mentioned that word a few times in his opening, because that literally was the theme from Coach Spurrier when it came to this Florida-Georgia rivalry when he first got to UF, because Georgia had beat Florida 15 out of the last 20 years and just dominated the Gators. And I think players, obviously fans, didn't really believe that Florida could beat Georgia. And obviously the last couple of years, that's kind of been the feeling with this rivalry. Obviously Trask and that bunch got the win in 2020, which is not too long ago. But obviously UGA has had their number the last couple of years. And for Florida to even have a shot to compete in this game, they got to have – there's such a small margin for error. They're going to have to play a perfect game. They're going to have the ball bounce their way on some plays that make a difference in the game. But above all that, they got to believe that they can win the game. And I know, and I'm sure that was part of the message from Coach Spurrier, because you got to have that confidence, I think, going into something like this, that you can compete with these guys. And they are certainly on the offensive side. They seem like they figured some things out. But man, it's going to get put to the test this week against Georgia, and we'll find out some more about that from Palmer. But it's we had someone on our message board, Nick, mentioned Spurrier coming around Napier's program and Billy doing maybe a better job of utilizing him more so than Mullen did. I mean, I don't think Mullen shied away from Spurrier per se.
I think they were talking about McElwain. There was like the rumors that McElwain was like not interested in having Spurrier around.
Well,
I think it was
not
more
a rumor.
Mac than Mullen.
I can confirm those rumors. But I think Napier.
That's my guy Mac. You watch how you speak about my guy Mac.
Hey, listen, Mac went out there in 2015 with Treon Harris, as you mentioned, and got that dub. Treon is 2-0 in fact. So the Gators coming off of the bye week, they are the healthiest that they've been since the last time they were getting ready to play a rival, and that was Tennessee week. So we'll get more into the Gators and kind of where they are at as a team. We want to jump to our next guest, Palmer Thombs from Dawgs headquarters, to talk some UGA Bulldogs and what they've got going on coming off of their bye. Before we do that, I want to give a shout out to My Perfect Franchise. Encourage all Florida fans to go reach out to Andy if you are ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, looking for a side hustle while working your current job, wanting to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy. Andy can help. He's a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership with franchises. You can learn more and contact Andy anytime at myperfectfranchise.net or calling or texting him at 404-973-9901. And with that, we now bring in Palmer. Appreciate you joining us this week, man. How's it going?
Yeah, doing well. Getting ready to hit the road to Jacksonville here before too long. We are flying down there tomorrow morning. And so just ready to see this game in action. The bye week always throws a wrinkle in the routine a little bit of getting to see football every Saturday. I think we all enjoyed a little bit of time off last week, but we're all probably ready to roll this week as well.
I almost drove to Auburn. One of my friends, Ben Chase, drove to 77 games last year and was trying to get me to go to Auburn last week. It's one of the only two SEC campuses or stadiums I haven't been to, and just decided not to. And it's so nice just sitting on the couch for 12 hours watching football, uninterrupted, 4 screens going. There's no deadlines. There's no stories to write. I'm just watching casually, tweeting about the Iowa punter.
I mean, as much as everyone looks at our jobs and is like, oh, those guys watch college football, we don't get to watch as much college football as you really think, because we're watching Florida football or Georgia football or, whoever the Dogs and Gators are playing next, trying to keep an eye on that as much as we are the national landscape and just sitting down and enjoying those games. That's why we're all huge proponents of noon starts.
Love a noon game.
Unless it's a blackout. Not
when you've been waiting 30 years for black jerseys. Tell all the fans to wear black, and then you get a 2-6 Arkansas team.
Blame the Razorbacks. It's all their fault. Well, Palmer, obviously, the big storyline with UGA is Brock Bowers and how that impacts their offense, impacts their season, maybe potentially. You hate to see any guy go down, and Billy was very complimentary of him this week, calling him one of the greatest players of all time in college football. Then he added last night, I'd rather play them without him than with him. And obviously that helps Florida's chances tremendously to have a shot to compete in this game. What type of a blow has that injury been to this offense, and how did they kind of move on from without him?
Yeah, it remains to be seen what type of a blow that is to this offense, because we haven't seen Georgia play a game without Brock Bowers since the start of this 2-year championship run. This will be the first time that he's missed a game. We saw them, for a half of football there in the, second half versus Vanderbilt. And, I think that you got a little bit of an idea, but probably not as much as you will coming out of this bye week for Georgia. They've had, I think obviously you never want to lose a player like Bowers. And, you probably would have been perfectly fine playing Vanderbilt without him and using that as one of the weeks of his recovery. But coming out of the bye, you've got an opportunity to regroup, reassess what you got, figure out, the different answers, different game plan. And so, by that token, I think that this injury comes at the right time,
Sure.
all things considered. So, I was telling Nick this earlier this week, and we talked about it plenty last week at Dogs HQ in replacing Bowers. Georgia does not have a ton of depth at tight end. They don't have another Brock Bowers. There's not another one out there. They've got good tight ends.
To be fair, I don't know that there's NFL teams that have another Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not a player you replace.
There's not many players out there of his caliber in general. So, Georgia has recruited that position well, and they've got good players, behind Bowers on the depth chart. Oscar Delp moves up from tight end 2 to tight end 1, and then you're looking at 2 true freshmen in Lawson Lucky, who is probably going to be the go-to guy, to step in as that tight end 2 if you're running 12 personnel, but you've also got Pierce Spurlin as well. Those 2 guys have battled injuries of their own, though. And so how confident is Georgia in those guys, those youngsters? There's going to be a lot that gets put on their plate, but I think that Georgia is also likely going to roll out more of a wide receiver heavy look. They've got the guys there. That was the position that you came into this season looking at, and you kind of lumped Bowers in with it because he's such a great pass catcher, but Georgia's pass catchers and Georgia's wide receivers was a position that you felt very confident in coming into this season. Ladd McConkey, who has battled injuries but is back from that. Arian Smith, has battled some drops, but he's still a part of this rotation. Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint is a veteran that's been around the program, made big plays. And then you've got 2 new guys in transfers from Missouri and Mississippi State, Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas. Those 2 guys led the Tigers and Bulldogs in receiving respectively. So they feel like they've got a good enough grasp on the receiving side of things to replace Bowers. It remains to be seen exactly how they approach it from the blocking side. Do you throw an extra offensive lineman out there at times to block? Do you put one of the physical, bigger bodied receivers out there that may not be, a great pass catcher? That's going to be the interesting part. Or do you just continue to roll with 2 tight ends and just count on those 2 true freshmen to step up? That's going to be the interesting part to see about this Georgia offense without Brock Bowers.
I think the way that Georgia's recruited, like you said, there's definitely options, but to me the biggest issue will be those options aren't as well rounded as Brock Bowers. So when you have Brock Bowers in 12 personnel, okay, well, we can't add an extra linebacker because he can leak out, and that linebacker is not running with Brock Bowers. Now it's a 60-yard touchdown, but he's also a very good blocker, and he can just stay in there and block. And now when you start putting other people in, it's like, okay, well, that guy's not going to go out and catch a pass. We can add an extra linebacker on the field now. This is probably a running play. So I think that kind of scheme versatility that Brock Bowers gives you, because you're not telegraphing anything when he's on the field, is something that Georgia will have to battle on Saturday.
No, you're absolutely right there. And, I think that they feel confident in those tight ends. Delp is a versatile tight end. He's got a couple of receiving touchdowns on this year, but has been asked to be more of a blocker for them. Stepped in last year in the Peach Bowl semifinal against Ohio State for an injured Darnell Washington. So he's been asked to be that blocking tight end before. But he's also been asked to catch the ball out of the backfield and out from various positions. Lawson Lucky is a guy that had a big spring before, and there was a lot of buzz about him coming into this season before he suffered his own ankle sprain and did his own tightrope procedure. So, I think that Georgia feels, like I said, good about those tight ends, but you'd feel a lot better if Brock Bowers was available.
A lot of ankle issues up in Athens.
There have been. Absolutely.
Got to work on our ankle mobility in the off season.
Palmer, what are your thoughts on Carson Beck so far this year, taking over for Stetson and just how he's done, obviously operating this offense? The numbers are very impressive.
Yeah, to me, I think Carson's season has been a little bit up and down, but that's probably to be expected with a first-time starter. I think a lot of people, myself included, just assumed that it was a bit of a shoe-in and, hey, he's going to come in here and just pick up right where Stetson left off. And that wasn't realistic. Stetson had started 2+ seasons and had so much experience under his belt. Carson is an older guy as well. He's in his 4th year in the system, but he doesn't have those game reps, and there's no replacing those game reps. So he has been learning as this season has gone along, and I think he has looked more comfortable as of late, compared to where he was to start the season. And another thing you got to consider in this is that Georgia is replacing it, not only its starting quarterback, but its offensive coordinator as well. And so, moving from Todd Monken to Mike Bobo, as much as they're running that same system, there's still a comfort factor of, hey, what is this coach going to call in this situation as opposed to that situation? And as opposed to what Coach Monken might have called, what's Coach Bobo going to be looking at? Because, the plays are still the same, but the decision making and the expectations and what you may rely on a little bit more this year versus last year, that's going to be different. And so I think for Beck, and Bobo, it took a little bit of time to, get their feet wet and get comfortable. And I feel like second half of that South Carolina game, coming out of the break and composed and coming back from a halftime deficit there, that was big for them. They came out strong against UAB, found ways to get Carson comfortable in that one. He responded well to a road atmosphere at Auburn, and then, had a really, really good outing against Kentucky. Once again, starting incredibly strong there. He was like 12 for 12, finished the first quarter perfect, and finished, was like 12 for 12, 13 for 13, 2 touchdowns in there, 100-something yards. So, I think the key to Carson Beck is getting him going early, getting him comfortable early. And, we listening to Stetson Bennett over the years, he said that he didn't really feel like he was playing football until he got hit. I think Carson Beck, may not be in that same mold, but he is certainly somebody that wants to get involved in the game. And so when Georgia's getting him, he's not necessarily the most mobile quarterback. His legs aren't as big of a threat as Stetson Bennett, but they like rolling him out of the pocket, and he's a former baseball player. So he's comfortable throwing on the run. And so, they've been moving him outside the pocket a little bit, and it helps to have, the protection and the safety blanket of a guy like Brock Bowers. He'll have to find those new go-to guys. But, I think that Georgia fans, look, if you told Georgia fans that going into the Florida game, 7 games into the season, that Carson Beck was going to be one of the top passers in the country and statistically and, across the board, top 10 in completion percentage, yards, attempts, I think that they would all take that, because Georgia's offense, especially with the running back depth and the injuries that they've had there, has had to rely on him. And being able to rely on a first-year starter in the way that they have maybe has been a little bit of a surprise, but it's certainly, an outcome that Georgia fans would take.
He's only been sacked 6 times. How much of that is just the offensive line and running backs doing well, or is Georgia, like you said, manufacturing ways to kind of get him out of the pocket?
A little bit of both. I credit the offensive line there more so than the design, the play schemes, because oddly enough, this offensive line, for as big and as bruising as they are, and we're built up to be, has been better in pass protection. Even with, its turnstile at right tackle, in terms of injuries there. Amarius Mims went down with an ankle injury and had the tightrope procedure. And that was against South Carolina. Then Xavier Truss, who started the season as the starting left guard, moved over to right tackle, and he got hurt with an ankle injury against Vanderbilt. And so both those guys, probably I would list them as questionable, for this game. Mims is at the end of that 6 weeks, and, Georgia is hopeful to get him back. The injury to Truss was not, did not require surgery. So he is just working through it. I think for both those guys, the thing that she feels good about it is that it's a position where you're not asked to move in space a ton. And you can, if you can move, get upfield, get down, drop back and pass protection, you can roll with an ankle there. You can tape it up and roll with it. So I think that we will see Amarius Mims out there. Going back to your original point here, he is a projected first-round pick. A guy that has been a big piece of this Georgia offensive line, was expected to be one and has been one when he's out there. Cedric Van Pran in the middle has started 37 straight games at this point. Knows, I think that's been a huge help to Carson as a first-year starter. Having a guy like that in the middle. Tate Ratledge at right guard has started a ton of games. Xavier Truss at left guard or right tackle has started a ton of games. The only, they were breaking in, 2 new starters at tackle, but doing so with Amarius Mims having starting experience and as much talent as he did. So they had a really good core group of guys, and then they've developed some depth through these injuries as well. They last year they played 7 offensive linemen, 35% of the snaps, or more. And so they feel comfortable rotating guys, even when the game is on the line. It doesn't have to be, garbage time for those guys to get in. So they will rotate guys. They feel good about their depth. They feel good about, the starting 5, obviously, but also, as you go further down the depth chart, 6, 7, 8th man on the offensive line, they feel like they've got the talent, and that has certainly helped keep Carson Beck clean.
Now, on the defensive side, Palmer, they are once again elite. They lead the SEC in basically every statistical category. You have to really find and dig into the stats to find anywhere.
Where do they not do well?
The one thing that they haven't done well, I mean, it's like a caveat. It's like they haven't done well, but there's one thing you have to take into account. It's touchdowns given up in the red zone. They actually rank last in the SEC in opponents scoring in the red zone. However, they've only had 15 red zone attempts as a defense, which is one of the fewest in the SEC. But when teams do get in the opposing offenses do get in the red zone against Georgia, they've been scoring touchdowns at a higher clip than anybody else. First of all, how elite has this defense been from your eyes, maybe especially compared to some other ones? And where are some of the weak spots, if any, with this unit?
Yeah, I think it's 11 touchdowns in 15 trips to the red zone, maybe 12. That was a stat that I looked up and very much caught my eye during the bye week. That's been something that Kirby Smart has harped on, with this defense and the fact that they have that standard of excellence, and that has been an area where he hasn't felt like that they have lived up to that standard. But like you said, statistically, they have been one of the best in the SEC in the country. They rank first in the SEC for total defense, scoring defense, rushing defense, passing defense.
Third down defense.
Yeah,
third down defense is the best in the country.
They pass the eye test based on stats, and look, there have been times where this defense has not looked as dominant as past defenses, but that's hard to do when you've lost as much talent as they have. And that's not to make any excuses for Georgia. Look, they knew that. They knew the challenge that faced them in 2022, losing all those guys off of the 21 defense. And they knew the same thing was true, losing a guy like Jalen Carter. And I'd added Nolan Smith, another first rounder there, who they played without for the last half of the season as he got hurt in this Georgia-Florida game last year. But it's still a big loss. So, what I would say about that red zone defensive woes of sort is that their front 7 is not as strong as it has been. They don't have and Kirby was aware of that before the season. He made it known, hey, look, we don't have a disruptive defensive lineman like we have had in the past with Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Trayvon Walker, Devontae Wyatt, those 4 guys being first-round picks over the last 2 years. They feel really good about the linebackers that they have at inside backer. Jamon Dumas-Johnson and Smile Munden there. Xavier Sori rotating in as well. Where they're not as strong, and look, they've got experience in the middle on the defensive line. Not Xavier Truss, Nazir Stackhouse, Warren Brinson, and Zion Logue. Those three guys have been around the block in the SEC.
Yeah.
Michael Williams is an incredibly talented player out at defensive end. Tramel Welthauer, in his 6th season at Georgia, and feeling very comfortable there. So they have the talent, they have players, they've got experience. It just may not be as talented, as dominant as it has been. And so what I would say about that is, Georgia's strength on defense is absolutely in the secondary. Georgia's weakness is up front, and it's not necessarily a weakness as much as it is a weaker side of the ball, or side of the defense. Because they've got the talent. It just has not been as pretty as it has been the last 2 years.
I got a theory on the red zone woes, and it might just be that they get down inside the 20 and they're so used to not being down there that they just don't know what to do.
And two of them, I will say, just thinking back on the red zone touchdowns that they've given up, they've been beaten on 3rd down and brought pressure. And so, that's a situation where you're making yourself vulnerable. But, if the offense has a good call against your good call, you can get beat. But if your good call is better than their call, you might go from giving up, 3 points to maybe forcing them out of field goal range, or, making that field goal a little bit longer. And, that's what happened, against Vanderbilt. They had a sudden change situation where Carson Beck fumbled it. And then they ended up bringing pressure on 3rd down to force Vanderbilt into a longer field goal that ended up getting missed because it was into the wind and longer than, what they were super comfortable with. So I think it's been a little bit of a, the stats tell a story, and that's absolutely true. But I think if you look at the film, it hasn't been as pretty, but it's still been pretty dang good.
No doubt.
Yeah, that's after 40 years of no championships, talking to all these Georgia writers, I'm like, you guys, the perspective has changed in Athens. Like, I look at Georgia and I'm like, yeah, it's not the same team, but it's still better than most teams in the country. It'll be interesting how much, and I kind of asked you this in our 5 questions, which is up on Gators Online today, but how much does this game mean to, you've got obviously Will Muschamp and Kirby Smart who have played at Georgia. I think there's more coaches
Mike
on
Bobo
the staff
as well.
Mike Bobo. And some of those guys didn't have the success that they're having now against Florida while they were players. How much does this game just mean to that coaching staff? And what do you think that that personal level for them, how's that help Georgia get ready for a Florida game?
Yeah, I heard you guys talking about Steve Spurrier and what this game means to him. That's kind of the way that I look at this game for Kirby Smart, a former player who's been a part of the series, understands it, and kind of brings that passion along with him in his, obviously both those coaches, we're talking about guys that are super emotional, going to be into it every week, but this one you may see just a little bit more fire, and it may not be an intentional thing as much as it may be a, internal thing where, they've just got a different sense of fire towards the opponent this week. It's hard to describe. And, I think that this rivalry is one that the players in the locker room in the Georgia football building understand, the significance of it, having coaches that, played in it and were a part of it certainly helps that and brings out that fire. But, to me, I think ultimately for Georgia, this is another game. They understand the importance of it, for the East, on an annual basis. This has been a game that has been, a factor in deciding the East. And if you're Georgia, it's a situation where every game is a factor in deciding your spot in the college football playoffs. And so as much as they don't look at it from a big picture perspective, I do think that this game means a lot to them. The kids from Georgia, the kids from Florida, there's a lot of those on these rosters. And so, they've grown up around it. They've seen it. If you've watched SEC football over the last, however long, these kids, for the entirety of these kids' lives, this has been a series that, is pretty split, with Florida dominating, 2000s and Georgia, having the recent success and then a little bit of a, 10-year divide there in the 2010s. So, I think that the players understand it. The coaches certainly, feel it because they were a part of it. And, this week obviously means a lot.
We got a question from Patrick. He wants to know, do you think Georgia will be able to run it down Florida's throat like Kentucky and take pressure off Carson Beck?
It'll be interesting to see if that's the approach that they take, because, that has not been the strength of this Georgia offense. The strength has been putting the ball in the air, but the strength has been putting the ball in the air to Brock Bowers. And Brock Bowers is not available. So, it'll be interesting to see. Georgia's running back situation has not been, like I said, has been banged up. It's been a beat up group with several guys, in and out of the lineup. Branson Robinson was lost, somebody that they were counting on to be a key contributor for them, a second or third type running back. He was lost for the season, in the preseason couple weeks before kickoff. Dejan Edwards missed the first couple of games. Kendall Milton has missed a couple of games here and there. Roderick Robinson has missed time since that South Carolina game. And so they've had to turn to converting Dylan Bell, a wide receiver, to running back. He still plays at receiver some, but, has gotten a good number of snaps at running back and traditional carries there. They've got a walk-on in Cash Jones, which is just an awesome name. But they use him a lot as well. So I would say I think Kendall Milton will be ready to play for this one. He aggravated his MCL sprain in the against Vanderbilt. But I think that he will be that bye week certainly came at the right time for him. I think he'll be available to go. Dejan Edwards has been very good for Georgia, and Dylan Bell has been solid option as well. So with those three guys, throw in Cash Jones if you want. They feel like they've got a solid backfield. It's not necessarily one that they're going to ride or die with. I still think that they will put the ball in the air even without Brock Bowers available. But I do think that also this is an offensive line, that can open some holes, especially if, Florida's defense, plays the way that they did against Kentucky, where it seemed like that there was, not a ton of desire to be there. Let's put it that way.
Well,
at some point, we all lost the desire to be there.
Well, speaking of desire, we got a question from Steven that asks, many teams get complacent after years of success. Do you feel UGA's current players have the fire to win like the last couple of years?
I think so. Because again, just look, last year you saw, it felt like there was a narrative about the doubt that Georgia was facing. And I don't know how much doubt they were actually facing, but as much as it was a situation where people looked at Georgia and said, well, these guys weren't, the main contributors to Georgia's 2021 championship team. And then they went out and proved that they could do it. I would say now without Brock Bowers, they may feel some of that doubt. They may feel some of the fire to, go prove people wrong, proving that they can do it without Brock Bowers for the time being. That may provide a little bit of a fire to them. I think that the win streak, that as much as they can say that they don't, that they're not aware of it, that they don't talk about it, every one of those players knows that they haven't lost a game in quite some time. And so, this is a situation where, deep down, they all know it, and they know the pressure that's on them. I think that they do have the fire, but maybe not. I wouldn't say that they've gotten complacent, but I do think that it is, certainly hard to show up week in and week out when you've got a couple of championship rings and 24 straight wins to show for it.
I forget the boxer. I forget the boxer that said it gets hard to wake up at 4 a.m. to go running when you're sleeping on silk sheets, like the drive that it takes a poor kid who's trying to like make it out of a bad neighborhood boxing. And then that drive to just put food on the table is different when you're driving a Maserati to the gym and you're like, so I really have to go do it today. But I think it is something. And I talked about Florida doing this, Florida learning how to win this year with a young coaching staff and young players. I think Georgia knows that. They've proven that. So when you get into a game like South Carolina, you're just not worried when you're down at halftime.
Yeah, and I think the last 2 years maybe has provided Georgia with a little bit of confidence of like, hey, look, we can do this. We can flip a switch, and we've been in this type of situation before. That's where I think the last 2 years have come into play more so than providing something that they can fall back on, and say, well, let's rest on our laurels. I think it's more of a look, we've been here before. We can do this. We've done it. We can do it again. That's where I think the last couple of years come into play more so than the other.
Sometimes when you rely on flipping switches, the electricity, you have a little brownout, it doesn't work. But it is a very talented team. But I do think that they kind of know how to win. They don't get flustered, and that'll be a big thing on Saturday for both teams.
Well, speaking of getting flustered, I know this fan this question from a Florida fan is, maybe asked jokingly, but something worth asking here that I will expand on with this question from Mr. Bassman. The first 4 games, only 1 interception from Carson Beck, and he's thrown an interception in each of the last 3 games. Now, no Brock Bowers. What do you think about his ability to take care of the ball this season? Are any of those recent picks not on him? And, do you think it will be maybe tougher for him to take care of the ball with no Brock?
Yeah, I'm thinking back on those interceptions. The one against Auburn was probably on him. It was an incredible play by the defender, Jalen Simpson there. Went over the top of the receiver, maybe a little bit behind Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint. But certainly the way that they bounced back from that one, I think that, that was an early interception, and they bounced back from that well. I cannot for the life of me remember what the Kentucky interception was. But the Vanderbilt one was
obviously it didn't matter.
Yeah. The Vanderbilt one was kind of an ugly one. Didn't really look like there was much of a receiver in the area, and maybe that's a miscommunication. Maybe that's he got flustered with a little bit of pressure in his face. But he turns around and goes and makes the tackle to prevent it from being a pick six. So, I don't know that it's a situation where Carson's going to get super flustered. I think that this is a game that he really, really wants to play well in. He's from Jacksonville. He knows what this game means. And so, I think that, maybe early you could see a little bit of jitters for him and coming into a situation where he knows the pressure that's on him. But the thing about Carson that has impressed me the most, and it's something that Kirby has said time and time again, is just how composed he stays, whether he throws an interception or not. It's almost like he doesn't care. And early on when the numbers weren't as good, some of the fans on our board were questioning, hey, does Carson care? Does he, is that not a good sign that he's just kind of ho-hum on the sideline after a drive stalls out or after a, interception, a mistake made. And, to me, I think that with a quarterback, that composure, can come across as a ho-hum attitude a little bit. But I think that Carson Beck certainly is going to have a fire in this one to come out and play well in his hometown. So, How many interceptions does he throw? I'm going to go with 0, just because I think that the bye week has probably been great for him to calm his nerves a little bit after a couple of. Look, they were not rough performances, but the Vanderbilt game was certainly not his best.
Sure. Final question for you, Palmer, then we'll get you out of here. On that note, for Florida to pull this off, they probably are going to have to pick off Carson or get some type of turnover. They're going to have to score touchdowns in the red zone if they can get in the red zone. Win on third down. We'll get into some keys in the final segment. In your mind, how does Georgia – we know how Georgia wins this game. How does Georgia lose this game, and can they lose this game? Do you think that they are capable of the losing streak ending in Jacksonville? They've had some close calls against South Carolina and Auburn. Probably this is their toughest test yet.
Yeah, they're absolutely capable of losing. I felt that way with Brock Bowers, and without him, I certainly feel that way. Even more so. I don't think that Georgia is going to lose, but they're certainly capable of it. And what it'll take a flustered performance. It'll take big plays from Florida early on to, put Georgia behind the 8 ball. It'll take, consistent long drives, stops on defense. That to me, like you said, converting in the red zone if you're Florida, creating turnovers if you're Florida. That to me is the kind of stuff that could get Georgia off of its rhythm. And that's how Auburn kept that game close. It's how South Carolina kept that game close. It's those type situations. But ultimately what has gotten Georgia over the top has been their response. Now, again, you look at that Auburn game, the response was throw the ball to number 19. They don't have him this week. And so, somebody else is going to have to step up for Georgia. I really do think that is going to be the case. If somebody else doesn't step up, this game's going to be a lot closer. And if Georgia is in a situation where they are looking for their guy and they can't seem to find the guy to step up, and Kirby said nobody has to be Superman to replace Brock Bowers. And I agree with that. I think it's going to take an overall team effort to replace him. But when it's, an important third down, somebody's got to get open. When it's, when it's an important, situation and your back's against the goal line, or you're in a situation where you need a
red
stop.
Zone.
Somebody's got to get a stop. And so, I think that it will take an overall team effort, but I think that for Georgia to, I think Georgia's going to win this game. I don't know about the 14.5. That's an interesting line. And so, look, it's a rivalry game. This game can, it really is. Kirby described it this way. It's a game of momentum with the 50-50 crowd. There's always one team that's riding the momentum and has the home atmosphere, home field advantage there. So, to me, I think for Florida to keep this game closer, it's going to take a fast start, and it's going to take, capitalizing on opportunities that Georgia may provide for them.
Good stuff. Palmer, for anybody else that wants to read up on your coverage, let them know where they can follow you and find you.
Yeah, at Palmer Thombs on Twitter, PalmerThombs, and head on over to Dogs HQ to check out the work of myself, Jake Rowe, Rusty Mansell, Jake Roos, and Jeremy Johnson, as we are, rolling along and getting ready to head down to Jacksonville.
It's awesome, man. We are looking forward to it. We will see you there. Appreciate you coming on, man, and dropping some knowledge.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Palmer. See you there.
All right, Palmer coming through. Good stuff there as we get ready for this cocktail party in Jacksonville. Always will be that, Nick.
What you sipping on, Zach?
I just got some water.
Oh, no, I meant your cocktail. It's a cocktail party, Zach.
Something fruity. Something fruity. You know me, Nicholas. All right. Well, before we get into this final segment, I want to give a shout out to Prairie Dental Center. The doctor is a UF grad who's practiced in Gainesville for 3 decades and has developed a deep understanding of how to diagnose and treat various dental problems, along with advanced skills and knowledge to provide more effective and efficient care to his patients. If you're having dental concerns or just need a cleaning, Prairie Dental Center offers a wide range of personalized care options to meet your individual needs. Give their office a call at 352-373-3431. Tell them Gators Online sent you, and your new patient exam will be free. And man, we are here. Look, this is Florida's national championship, right, Nick? I mean, this is you roll, you put everything out. You don't hold nothing back. All the defensive and offensive schemes and trick plays, all the things that Chris Couch has in
maybe
Jeremy
not all
Crawshaw.
Maybe not all the trick plays. That Khalil Jackson pass, I think that's got to be out.
I need my guy Khalil to get another shot at a pass.
No. Maybe next week. Maybe next week.
I don't know. Well, listen, I'd love to see Jeremy Crawshaw make a play because you asked.
Who wouldn't?
I mean, so yeah. Look, first of all, we're not gonna give any predictions on this show. You guys can wait till Friday like you always do, but we'll try to give you a little bit of hope. Number one, they're healthy. I mean, I can knock on wood. I don't have to knock on wood anymore. They're done practicing. I guess they could get injured coming off the bus, but they are healthy. They've only had 3 times this season where they've had just 3 guys on the injury report. That was for the opener, for the Tennessee game, and for this game. So you're getting Kingsley back. You got Trevor Etienne at 100%. Andy Jean's back, which I think is important because Caleb Douglas is still out. You basically got no one out on defense. And you've had the bye week to address some things, especially on the defensive side. So you got all your soldiers going into battle, Nick.
Yeah, you do. We'll see what it looks like. I think keys to the game, you have to start fast. What was the score last year at halftime? Like 28-3, something like that.
It was not close.
It's tough, and looking at this game now for 2 weeks, I think fans are getting tired of me talking about Georgia, but I just don't. I think what we're seeing this weekend is a rebuild versus a reload, and obviously Florida is not reloading. They're not. That's not the team I'm talking about. So for me, it's more of what does it look like for Jordan Castell, TJ Searcy, Kelby Collins, Najee Harris if he gets into the game, Eugene Wilson. What do the freshmen look like? They're going to be learning what this environment is like, what the pure hatred is like between these teams, between the fan bases. So how do you handle that? I think that's a big thing for me. If Florida goes out there and loses the coin toss, gets the ball first, and immediately Graham throws a turnover, like, okay, let's simmer down here, try to figure some things out. But like, Florida,
how dare you put that on Graham? You know, Graham wouldn't dare. Florida
just has to start fast. They have to score points on their first 2 drives, get a Georgia stop. I wonder, talking to Andy Staples about this, he thinks, hey, Florida's going to have to throw the ball to win a bunch of these games. And I'm thinking, no, like you probably just want to limit possessions.
You heard what Palmer just said.
Well, it's not what you're doing this week. This week, you're not limiting possessions. That Tennessee game plan, which I thought was great against Tennessee and executed to perfection, required you converting on 3rd down multiple times per drive to have these long extended drives. Georgia's not letting you convert on 3rd down multiple times. You might have to try 4th down. So to me, it's interesting. I think there's at least a proof of concept that Florida can throw the ball to win games. Now, granted, Vanderbilt and South Carolina are the 2 worst passing defenses in the conference. So there is an
we
element.
Heard Palmer say that that's where Georgia's elite.
Yes. The other thing is, like, Georgia has elite safeties that will be first-round draft picks, second-round draft picks. They've got good corners. If Florida is going to take what the defense gives them and you dink and you dunk, no defense in the country swarms. Maybe Michigan and Georgia just swarm to the football. So, like, that 2-yard pass might go for 3 yards, but it's not going for 7 or 8.
Yeah, and that's, like you said, it's going to be interesting to see what their offensive game plan is. And look, they feel like they took big strides against South Carolina. They feel like they're, they found their groove. And I think that too. I don't think it's just the opponents. I do think that they've gotten better. They have started to gel as an offensive line, but once again, the lineup is changing again. But we're going to find out on Saturday how much offensive progress they've really made. And again, if they seemingly take a step back, that doesn't mean that what they did the previous 2 weeks was all for nothing. Like,
we're on two ends of the SEC spectrum. Like, the two games we're talking about, which I think are important because Florida needs to put that on tape. They need to put it on tape just to show themselves. Like, hey, listen, we can do it. It's not just in practice. But if you want to be realistic about it, Georgia is the best defense in the SEC, and what you did the last 2 weeks is against the two worst defenses in the SEC. So, like, I don't expect Florida's passing game on Saturday to look like it did 2 Saturdays ago in Columbia.
No. That's
so, like, you can be excited and happy, like, hey, look, they can do it. You might be able to do it next week against Arkansas.
Sure. The one key to this game, and I wrote about it, and I know that I know inside the building that they're excited about this, and I mentioned this in the war room that we put out at Gators Online yesterday. But Nick mentioned the third down matchup. Like to me, they're both key, but like Georgia has the number 1 third down defense in the country. And Florida has not been great on third down offensively. So you almost can't really expect them to do well in that area. Like, just when you do get faced in third down, try not to be in third and long. Try to convert as many as you can. However, on the other side, it is a potential, or what seems to look like a good-on-good matchup between Georgia's third down offense and Florida's third down defense. Both have been elite. Both have been in the top 10 nationally. For Florida, it is really significant because they were 129th in third down defense last year. Probably the worst thing that they did on defense. And they're 129 out of 131 teams. That's how bad that was. They're 20 percentage points better. They were giving up basically 49%. Now they're at 29% on conversion rates on third down. Again, though, that will be put to the test this Saturday against Georgia. But I know Armstrong I'm told, is confident in his game plan. Look, his game plan against Tennessee was very good, executed to perfection. And if they can find some success against Georgia, at the very least, get off the field on third down, they're going to have to do that to have a chance.
Have a chance.
Have a chance.
How you put that? Listen, I have not been very complimentary of Florida's chances to win this game. I think Georgia could even cover, but like weird stuff happens in Jacksonville. We already brought up Treon.
We thought Will Muschamp was getting fired. He was going to show up in Jacksonville. He was going to come back to Gainesville, and on Sunday he was going to
get the brakes beat off of him in Jacksonville. And by the time we woke up on Sunday, we'd be writing Will Muschamp's fired. Instead,
there was no way that Florida was going to win that game with Treon Harris as their quarterback, throwing 6 passes for the whole game, completing only 3.
Completing only 50% of his 6 passes.
And they won. So if that Florida team, I mean, now again, they beat the number 11 Georgia team. This is a juggernaut that this Florida team is facing. But I tell you what, this Florida team ain't as bad as that 2014 team. That was, I don't know how they beat. I mean, that was just Kelvin Taylor, his dad, the grass that he used to run on, said, "You know what? This is your day." You and Matt Jones, 200 yards from both of them.
Well, I think it was like 197, 192 on 50 carries, or 25 each, and they each scored twice. I think basically what you and I have alluded to in keys to the game is that Florida needs to play damn near perfect football.
Yeah.
And have Georgia mess up a couple times.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is, if you do some of these things, get off to a fast start, get a turnover, just find some ways to fluster the Bulldogs. Do you get them into mistakes because they're off their game, because they're trying to play catch up, because they face some adversity for the first time? And look, I'll say it. That's another thing. Billy kind of said it this week. They haven't had one of those experiences that kind of recenters you. They've won 24 in a row. It's got to end at some point. And, look, like Florida's been battle tested. Like, they've gone to Utah. They played against Tennessee. They went on the road against Kentucky. And then obviously the fourth quarter comeback against South Carolina, which again wasn't a great team, but Georgia has not played the schedule yet that Florida has, and they really haven't been challenged like that. I think this is going to be the toughest team that they'll play yet. I know that they played Kentucky, and Kentucky beat Florida, but that was at home in Athens. This is a rivalry game in Jacksonville. I think Florida's better now than they were in Lexington that weekend. So this is going to be the best that Georgia's seen yet, and you got to hope if you're Florida that you can just catch them off guard and punch them in the mouth. And, they haven't been punched in the mouth yet before. I take that back. I take that back. South Carolina, they got punched in the mouth. Like, they were down at halftime at home. They had to come out and figure that one out.
Yeah, I think then Georgia just realized that South Carolina can't stop a pass. Any pass, all of them. Inside the building all week, it's you and I have talked, like, it has to be perfect, this and that. You can't have your team believing that. Like, hey, we have one mistake and we lose. And if I'm the one that makes a mistake, now you're playing tight. So inside the building, the message all week has been, our good is good enough. Our best is good enough. You don't have to play perfect. And that's another reason why starting fast is so important. If you get out there and it's 14-0 after the first quarter, you start looking at yourself on the sideline going, yo, coach lied. Coach lied. Our best is not good enough. Like, this ain't it. Like, you need to have some success early to let that belief come in. Like, yeah, no, coach was right all week. Chaos was telling us we can get to Carson Beck, and we're getting to him. Coach Armstrong told me he's going to throw an interception, and Devin Moore already got one. Like, these coaches knew what they were talking about, and it's on us to execute. But you can't go into a game if you're a football player thinking, I have to play perfect. If my shoelace is untied on the sideline, that's not perfect, and we'll end up losing the game. You can't play that kind of tight. So that's why I think Florida's coaching staff is hammering into their team, whether it turns out to be true or not, that your good is good enough, your best is good enough, it is going to get the team just to play confidently and play loose. Because if they're listening to me, Zach, all week, they play very tight.
It'll be interesting to see if the D does show up, Nick. Are we going to get the Florida defense of Tennessee?
Well, like, you still have to score. And, like, Georgia doesn't give up more than 21 points.
Yeah. But, so, but again, if Florida's defense gives up a bunch of drives early on, like, then there's no shot. Like, they have to have their defense show up. And in the first two SEC road games, they have not. They showed up at the end, though. Like, you got to give them credit at South Carolina, man. When they had to get a stop, they did it. So let's go through some of these comments. Harrison has his concerns.
I mean, I don't know that Georgia needs to run the ball. I think they can throw the ball. But yeah, if Florida doesn't stop the run, like, it's gonna be a long day. Saturday will be a long, long day.
We got a lot of people chiming in here on the comment sections. Appreciate everybody for tuning in.
Our guy Chris Sorley never misses a show. Already in Jax. I'm guessing watching this from the junkyard on his phone. Chris is normally confident, Zach. Chris is normally confident. Not this week, though. Not this week.
I mean, look. They are the defending back-to-back national champions. It's nothing wrong with, going into it knowing odds are stacked against you. Look, they're 2 touchdown underdogs. They got to go out there and have some things go well early, get momentum on their side, and just as we started the show with talking about Spurrier and talking about Spurrier, God's got a smile on the Gators, Nick. That's without question. They're going to need that message that was sent to make its way to Jacksonville. You can beat these guys, Nick. Don't go in there thinking that they're better than you. You're just as good as them.
I'm not. I'm not.
Well, let's get on out of here before we do that. Final shout out to rogueshop.com. This might be a week where you want to go check it out. If you're having issues with sleeping, chronic pain, and or anxiety and stress, Rogue Shop sells CBD, THC, edibles, smokables, and vapes, as well as handcrafted bath salts, soaps, candles, and much more. Rogue Shop is a true small business. They have 5 employees and make all of their products with their own cannabis grown in their manufacturing facility. Visit rogueshop.com. That's ROGUE shop.com. And that will do it for this week. Nice bye week off, but it is fun to be not only talking about football, but having a rivalry go down. This is always fun to make the trip to Jacksonville. I know Nick enjoys it. He gets to get some baseball in as well. So make sure you guys are following his content. Make sure that you're watching. Are you going to be on Feinbaum or are you going to be on SEC Net or the SEC Now show? Or the Feinbaum, right?
Feinbaum tomorrow. So I think I'll be late to baseball. I think I'll be on set with Paul.
Okay.
As
so
baseball's starting.
So Florida fans, make sure you tune into Feinbaum on Friday to check out Nick, and make sure you guys stay locked with Gators Online. We didn't mention it, but this is a recruiting weekend for the Gators as well. They can have guys in town. So Corey and Keith, as always, will be on top of the recruiting coverage. Nick and I will have coverage for you from Jacksonville. And if you are not a subscriber, we got a big game special this week. You can get a full year, half off. So make sure that you take advantage of that. Get in the door if you're not already a subscriber, and make sure that you like and subscribe on here as well. Nick and I will see you guys this weekend from Jacksonville with our rapid reaction from the Florida-Georgia game. Thanks to Palmer for joining us from Dawgs headquarters. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Albaverdi. We'll see you guys in Jax.